try to connect them.
Okay.
I can do that probably.
It's all yours.
Okay, today is
March 20th.
March 20th. It is 7 o'clock. This is the Revenue Enhancement Committee meeting. The board members that are here of the committee is Frank Sermonero, Michael Wolf, Connor Kurtz was unable to attend, Monica Hamill's here, and Dr. Otto, superintendent, and a few people from the public are here. I handed out, did you guys have a chance to read over this structured breakdown for the sports activities?
I have not.
Okay.
I took a brief look at it. I had a couple of questions.
Okay. I emailed you on. We just had a hard copy just for for quick reference. But what questions did you have so far?
Well, we had received a breakdown of sports previously, and what it did, that breakdown had the number of students that participated in that sport or activity, as well as the fees. I mean, for the stipend, the extra, all those costs. Now,
that's where this came from.
Well, the numbers here are a lot higher as far as participation than what was in that original email.
Let me see.
I'll give you an example. So I didn't know, some of them are actually double the amount of participants than what was given to us before. High school baseball.
Let me find
You
the.
have 54, yet the handout we had was 20.
Baseball. Which one is that? Because I took these from.
That's this one. Remember this?
Yeah, let me find it. Oh wait, did you add up the high school and middle school?
Well, see, that was.
Because this is high school, middle school added together. Was it individually?
Okay.
This is high
only
school.
the high school.
No, this is high school and middle school added together.
Well, maybe it would be good for you to walk through what you did here, and then maybe their questions will get answered as you walk through it.
Okay. I'll start up at the beginning where it's a pink area. Now, if this was color-coded, it's actually colors on your screen. But I started out with the clubs. So we listed all the clubs, and I took the information that Mrs. Penza gave me, and that's what the expenses are, the stipends, and the other costs that are related to that club. So there's $77,042.76 that make up all those clubs. There are approximately 516 students that participate in clubs, and the way that I broke it out was to try to give it some formula so that we can plug them in as we need to change the pricing. But it looked like if I put in $75 per student per club, you would generate a revenue of $38,700. That would only cover about 50% of the expenses. So I was trying to figure out where our comfort zone is on how much the administrative or how much the district should be responsible for each one of these items and or the parents. So as I work through each area, you can see the chess club, they would have to pay $75 to be in that club, and then all the way down.
If you haven't signed in, if you wouldn't mind signing in, just so we know who's here as a record, thank you.
Then I broke down to the theater section, which is the green section. You notice that all of those activities in the theater section come out to $23,840.87. Now here's where we have to go back and Ms. Goss is going to start looking at what each activity, how many students are in every activity, so we can get a better read on this. But I took this from what Danielle had. The theater estimation is my estimation because we need to go back and look at what's in the roster. But if each student had to pay $175 to be a part of that theater group, then that would be a revenue of $13,125, which once again only brings us to 55% of the expenses covered. The same with music. Music numbers, I got, these are fairly accurate.
Really?
This could change. Yeah, these are what Danielle gave me. That, what
Well,
are they?
Well, number one, band 6th to 8th. I have no idea how many kids are in 6th to 8th grade band.
Okay.
But there's, for band for the high school, it's 70-some kids themselves.
Okay, so that's what we discussed today with Dr. Otto and Danielle. She's going to go back and look at every single area and find out the roster to make these numbers more complete. This is the model to see how we could figure it out, what the cost is going to be per student.
If I can interrupt, one of the things that we discussed, Mrs. Hamill came in and met with Danielle and me today. There are a number of clubs, and you might want to, if you took your notes there, point out for the benefit of the public and this committee that are self-sustaining. They would have to come out of the mix as well. Do you want to run down
Right,
what
the
clubs they are?
clubs that are going to probably come out because they're self-sustaining is the high school yearbook, middle school yearbook, middle school music director, was it?
Yes.
I have M. And then the middle school stage crew. Those would come out of the mix, which would increase probably the cost per student. But once again, we have to break down what is in each roster. When it comes to, which section is this? The section where the high school student government will have to look at whether we should be charging them to be in a club. The middle school newspaper, middle school student government, and which Dr. Otto explained to me, the National Honor Society. We've exempted those from club fees.
That was part of the original 2010 version of going to the activity fee. We had felt that there were a number of clubs that were actually providing a service that we didn't feel it was fair to actually charge them. And in the case of National Honor Society, the kids aren't selected because they didn't ask to be selected. They're selected because they are being recognized for something. You don't sign up for National Honor Society. You apply for that, and then you go through a rigorous process to be accepted. So we didn't feel it was fair to it's like paying a membership to get in something that's really an honorary society. So that's where we are now with that. That obviously at the board's discretion could change, but I wouldn't go on record recommending that our National Honor Society kids pay for their membership into that organization.
Right. So these numbers for students may change once we get the full rosters from the advisors, which, like I said, Miss Goss is working on that. Once you plug in the numbers, it basically will stay the same as the formula works to see how.
And tell me, what's the formula again? You're taking the expenses divided by the number of students and just taking half of that?
Yeah.
But this is just the stipend and those costs, right?
It's the stipends. It was everything that Danielle gave to me, like the stipends, the Social Security, retirement, transportation was in there. Like, I think, yeah.
I would have thought that those costs would have been much higher because some of these teams play multiple times.
Let me see this. Let me see. Yeah, transportation's in there. It has the salary for the stipends, salaries for the game help, Social Security, retirement, security and official fees, transportation, new equipment, and then it says activity fee, how many students participate in that activity. So that's what I took. Danielle's numbers. I added the middle school with the high school. I subtracted out any gate fees that they would have made, and then took the number of students divided by the cost, and that's how I came up with that. And then took a certain percentage of what I thought students or families would be able to afford. We're not asking them to pay 100%. The school district was still planning on providing.
Yeah, somewhere around 50%.
Yeah,
Well,
I didn't know what we felt comfortable with.
I felt what we did when we looked at these, because this is, I'm going to give Mrs. Hamill the credit for this here. We just wanted to verify the actual, what was being used as, quote, the formula. this formula can be used accordingly based on what the board would believe would be the level, the threshold at which you would want to set it. You might want to, the biggest variable in there is the percentage of the expense that you would, if you want to move that up and down, that's what would move up and down a new activity fee structure. So while some of these numbers aren't exactly what would come out in the final number, this formula conceptually would provide the board with a basis going forward to do this on an annual basis, and it might change based on how much the district believes it can afford to fund, or it could say, you know what, we're going to turn over the whole cost based on this formula to the parent. So there are still some variables here, as you're pointing out, that probably need to be verified and worked on.
Mm-hmm.
But I think
I'm just trying to understand
right.
what the goal is.
So that's basically how it did the top portion, and I stated approximately, it says 55% is what the cost would be. I mean, the expenses for the parents. So what that came out to be is, if we put all the expenses together for the clubs, it was $164,751.44. If we went with this type of formula, we could get at least $87,165, which would roughly be about 52%, 52.91% that we could cover with this formula. And that's just for the clubs, theater, and music. And I separated those out from the sports because there were different, actually, to tell you the truth, it was harder to track the students in the clubs and activities because I didn't have a roster to really go by. But I had all the information from Danielle for the sports, so it was a little bit easier to track them down.
So what if we have somebody that does a fall sport, to say they do football,
Mm-hmm.
and then they do track in the spring. So really they're talking about $350 for one and $450 for the other.
Yeah. I mean, I took my kids, I put them down on here, and I know that my daughter alone, I'll probably spend over $1,000 to have for full year activities.
I mean, this is what she has proposed is obviously radical thinking. I mean, we've never, contemplated, this kind of cost being borne by the families. I think we realized 2 years ago when we instituted the activity fee, that's kind of why we went with the flat fee, because at that time, that was a new concept to even do it at that level. So things have gotten a little bit more difficult with the budget. Maybe it's ultimately not going to wind up that we need to charge that much, but at this point, I think we have to be looking at some model, and she's offering this one at this point, which I think puts in our control certain variables that obviously would change when you get real numbers or close to real numbers, and then you can adjust it up and down accordingly.
I think it's really important that we know what the costs are to run these clubs.
Those are the real costs.
Those
are.
I understand.
Okay.
But I think there needs to be a set value to those things, instead of dividing it by number of students and things of that nature. I'll give you an example. I think the pink should be $150. I think the green should be $225, and I think the blue should be $300.
And that's
Okay.
And then whatever that covers, it covers.
whatever.
Yeah. I mean, it's just my comment, just my thinking is I think there needs to be a value put on these things.
But if they do,
if they can fundraise to help offset some of that cost, so some of the kids don't, are paying less or whatever happens. But
so
you start getting into this whole thing of we're losing students, and then you're trying to change this whole calculation again because we're losing students, and then the cost of the stipends go up the next year, and everything gets adjusted again. I think you just need to put a value to these categories and say this is what the costs are. If times change again and things get better, and we can start lessening that cost in the future again, I'm sure the school district would do that. But for now, it's either this or you lose it. And if you lose it, you're going to go somewhere outside the school district and still pay double this price to participate in those activities. It's ugly, but that's the truth.
Yeah, my concern about putting just a value to it was that hopefully when things got better, we could just plug in the changes and it would still be basically what we did.
Yeah, I understand.
That's the only reason I did a formula type base.
Yeah,
so that
I get it, and I think you did a great job.
We'd just be consistent.
And to Frank's comment, you can come up with whatever, and I don't say it negatively, whatever pricing scheme you want. I mean, that's really going to be at the discretion of the board. We can take the numbers and crunch them and tell you what it'll do for the program and go from there. I think the thing administratively that we need to know is if we're going to move forward is does the board endorse, putting together some kind of plan like this? And because we're going to have to revise our policy, we're going to have to let the public know that this is what's coming, and that time is coming very soon. Because we've obviously conceptually kicked this thought around for a couple months now. So to get that, like you said, as far as we can get these numbers rather quickly. I mean,
She's working on it.
I mean, that's not a 6-week job. I mean, that's a couple days at most to get that kind of information. And then whether you want to go with a flat rate or whether you want to stick with this plan, I think is kind of what the committee needs to be able to take back to the full board for a meaningful discussion.
I just had, I guess, $125 is the first pink you thought? At
150.
Pardon me?
150.
150. See, I personally think that's harder than the 75 because if you want to do 3 or 4 clubs, that's a lot of money right there.
Hey, life's a bitch, man. I mean, sometimes, I want to participate in a lot of things too, but sometimes I can't. I don't have the money to do it. We are faced with a reality here,
right?
And we can all complain about it as much as we want, but it's a fact. We can't afford to run these programs. If the parents, want to contribute, it may have a situation where, you can't participate in as many things as you want. You were in 6 things, now you can only be in 4 things, or whatever it is.
So
the costs aren't fake. The costs are real. We're paying these stipends to run these clubs.
So then you want to have the expenses covered at 100%?
Not necessarily. I mean, I don't know what
his plan might do that. It might not.
Expenses would be right.
Okay.
His plan.
I'm just saying, what is a value? Put a value to that experience. And
Well,
what is a
150
fair
would actually
value?
put that at 100%.
Well, and you're assuming this number of
If
students
the number of
stays the same,
students
and
stays the same.
You don't know.
Right, that's true.
And I think not only would that help you keep these clubs for this year, but it might help strengthen these clubs so they can continue, year after year, not just fall away. I mean, we don't want to see them go away, but at the same time, they got to get funded somehow. Nobody's stepping up to the plate to give us any money to fund these things. So.
Well, that
How did you do the sports one? That's,
it's basically the same way. I took
I think that looks good.
I took the averages out and took the number of students, and then I just found what was pretty much the average amount there.
Do you want
So we
just
would
for the
actually-
benefit of the public, do you want to kind of give them a heads up of what you're talking about there?
What do you mean, the category
Just the
A?
categories that you have there.
Well, category A was a $450 category. Should I give them?
Just to tell the sports that you have in there. I
The
think that would be
sports so
great.
far, but depending on whether everything is covered through our Brian Subers with the Title IX, these may change, but for now this is what it is. It's boys basketball, girls basketball, golf, softball, boys volleyball, girls volleyball. That's category A. And that was all taken by what the current expense is for that sport. The category B is at $350, and that includes baseball, wrestling, football, field hockey, boys track, girls track, boys bowling, girls bowling. And you see the girls and boys bowling, I don't have the full amount yet because there were some lane fees that weren't included in my original spreadsheet. And then category C is $250, and it's cross country, boys soccer, girls soccer, cheerleading. We have approximately 821 students that participate in sports, and we would be able to, I just got bifocals and I can't see. I'm sorry. I'm like, where's that? Revenue for category A, if students were to remain active, that would be 187 students. The revenue for that would be $84,150. Category B, if all students remain active, it'd be, which is 335 students, would be $117,250. That's the revenue. For category C, there's 299 students currently, which the revenue would be $74,750. So it would generate a revenue about $436,610. If you look at the current cost, it's $523,775, which would be able to get it close to 83.36% covered by parents with this breakdown. And then that would be it for the activities, for the sports. And the formula is basically all the same, just taking it, averaging it, giving it a value rather than a...
Yes, that's I guess what I liked about that. You broke it down to say this is the cost,
right?
Cost, but then you gave it a value. You said, well, this is the value of the category. Like that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, this one was a little bit harder because of the way I didn't have the full rosters. This I had the full roster, and I had the actual cost of everything, whereas the clubs are more difficult to figure out the cost.
Because they do a lot of fundraising on their own already. The major part of the real cost of the clubs is really just the stipend. They don't really do much travel.
And the advisors, that's
what I meant, the stipends for the advisors.
Monica, just trying to absorb all this. For the boys basketball, 40 students, the cost per student is $421. So if you took 40 times 421, it comes up to $16,848. That's what the number.
Okay.
Just putting in here. If you do that for all of category A, for girls basketball all the way down to girls volleyball, it totals out to $88,077. And the revenue, based on this formula over 450, is 84,000. So it's almost 90% funded, 96% funded.
In this specific category.
In A, category A.
Yeah, I took an average of if you took all the revenues and then you divided it by the total cost, that's how I got the 83. Okay. I didn't take every little category and try to cover it 100%.
That's okay, because the next category B is 100%. It's actually 100.
Okay.
A little over 100%. Because we're raising 117, but the cost is 110. And it seems that some of these, the category C, are subsidizing.
Yes.
In some case, the higher cost ones.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just.
Yeah, I
did. I think that was kind of sort of the goal.
It was.
Yeah.
That was talked about. I remember.
It was, because if we take the actual cost of each individual one and only do 100% at that, it doesn't allow us to have a nice even
I understand.
flow.
No, I think this is good. Thank you. I understand it.
And I think when we talked today, again, Mrs. Samuel came in to talk with Mrs. Penza and me. What the ultimate prices are, I don't think are as important as coming up with a model that can be used year in and year out as we continue to probably, again, for the foreseeable future, have to deal with this funding issue in education across the state. I don't think it's going to go away anytime soon. So rather than reacting to it, I think these are some critical first steps toward putting something in place that can at least manage it and be adjusted according to the circumstances that we're dealing with.
Yeah, I totally agree. And the breakdown of these different colored clubs and the categories, I like that.
I mean, is it a perfect model yet? Maybe not, but I think it
starts to organize it.
It starts to organize it and gets the conversation started.
And I don't know the prices either. Like I said, I just gave you off the top of my head what I think the prices should be, but it's just one person's opinion. Like you said, Dr. Otto, that could all get flushed out.
Right.
As long as everyone agrees on the structure, which
right.
I think you laid out real well.
Yep, I give her all the credit. I mean, she worked on this and came to us for the verification of the numbers so far, and obviously they need some tweaking, but conceptually, if I had worked on this is probably something I would have come up with. So conceptually, I like it. I don't like telling people that the costs are going to go up, but at the same time, I think we've been through that conversation a number of times. So
I think my concern is, we're looking at these numbers and the participation as it currently stands, and what will happen is families will be forced to choose instead of doing 2, maybe 3 of things. They'll maybe just do 1, but the cost will still be the same, but the revenue will be less.
Well, we talked about attrition. I mean, there's going to be some attrition with these kind of costs, I think.
Because we've seen it. We've seen it already in the music program for band. That's exactly what happened.
Yeah, I can't say 100% that all of these clubs will survive. But if that's the case, if something drops out, that also means the expenses are going to go down. Mm-hmm. If they only have one person in the French club, then there is no club, unless the teacher wants to do it. We might have to look at that.
That's where I think his comment is more apropos, that you put an actual value on it. That way, if a club does drop out, it doesn't mess with this formula then.
Right.
Your variables become more static rather than they don't move around as much.
I think you need this whole exercise so you know what the actual expenses and costs would be, and that you could plug the actual number of students in and see what those costs would. So this model is critical to have and to continue to use. But it helps you arrive at what that dollar number is going to be. It's not necessarily the equation itself. The equation might be just part of it, and then you can say, all right, well, we think we're going to put the number here. That's where we really need it to be, irregardless of how the equation calculated it. But you still need to know what that would have been.
I think also, to use your comment, Frank, the variable in that cost/student column, if it's fixed, it allows us to have a more reliable prediction as to the revenue. Because when we go to do our budget next year, we can say, well, our 3-year history of participation rate shows X, so that we can get closer to 100% on our guess of what the revenue, because revenue is always a guess for things like this. You want it to be a very, very, very educated guess, though, rather than just popping some number in there. So,
and there could be, if these are instituted, there could be ways where the parent and the student don't suffer that full burden of that cost. I don't know what they would be, but there could be, fundraisers. There could be associations out there donating to it. We don't know what could happen that could help, some of these students.
Well, I know
absorb some of the cost of those clubs, but we just got to set a value.
We've heard through Bob New that the foundation and foundations in general, he said the one specifically in Phoenixville does a program where they offer scholarships to help offset some of for the more needy kids. So as they begin to raise more money, that could be another avenue. Right. I mean, it's only one thing, but so.
Yes?
No, go ahead.
She's raising her hand.
With PIAA, you're not allowed to fundraise for an activity fee. They won't allow it. So you can't, like the baseball team could do a fundraiser and say, okay, we made $1,000 on our own that we want to contribute to this, and now we want to take this off of our kids' activity fee. For some reason, for PIAA, you're not allowed to.
I'm not aware of that. I'd have to research that.
If you could, that would be great.
Because I've just read their bylaws in the last 2 or 3 weeks, and I don't know anything in their bylaws that even speaks to that.
So
I'd like to know
last year and this year.
Well, if you could tell me the source that gave you that information, I would actually. Who?
Goose.
Goose said that?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll have to round
So
up with
you may
her
just
and,
wanna
because
check into that.
I'm not saying it's wrong, I've
Yeah.
just never heard of that.
Yep.
Just as a related question on fundraising in general, when you're talking about fundraising, at what point in time is that fundraiser for? So if I'm a fall sport and our first day of practice is August, whatever date, do we start fundraising after I know I'm on the team? If I'm a parent, how much involvement do I have in fundraising before my activity fee is due? So it's more after the fact. So is that fundraising for this season? Is it for the future season? Really, how does the fundraising work?
Well, fundraising, first of all, is money that is raised by the student groups, and it's independent of the district's money. What the groups that raise that money choose to do with it is strictly their choice.
They could send it back to the parents?
They could do with it what they want. I mean, they're supposed to fundraise toward a program, but if they want to buy this, that, or the other thing, that's kind of up to the club. That money gets put into student activity accounts, which the school district does not. Mm-hmm. They don't have any say over those. Right. That's student money, student raised. So I don't know if that's helping to answer your question or not.
I thought there was a comment made about finding some ways to offset some of these. We're talking $300-400 potentially for an activity fee. So are we saying that this fundraiser has nothing to do with that activity fee, right?
No, you could use it to help offset the cost. You could.
I think what he's bringing up is a timing issue. You got to pay first.
Right. I mean, it's due shortly after the teams are formed, whatever that magic date is when activity fee is due. It's pretty early on in that time.
Yeah, it's usually I think it's in like September.
Right. So
for the fall sports anyway.
Right. And the fundraisers usually take a few weeks to play out and get the money back. Depending on what it is, you could bring yourself to a situation where you're out of pocket, hoping to get money back in your pocket, or is that not how? That's not what we're saying.
Well, the coaches have a lot to do with where that money goes. So whenever you fundraise,
But what you're saying is, I
Yeah,
think
you-
what you're saying is,
Because I may not know that I'm going to be on
Right.
the team,
Right.
so if I fundraise and I put my efforts forward and, I'll generate some revenue here, and then also I'm not on the team, I don't take the money with me, right? But I feel like I did something for no reason.
Does the sports
Right.
boosters run, the fundraising, and do they manage like student accounts for fundraising? The music boosters do?
Yeah, we have the
And-
student accounts, like we have where their money is, that each goes into their own account. But we don't do fundraising, we do general fundraisers, but each team does its own fundraising, which then they use to go back into new uniforms. Because remember, they only get a stipend from the school of maybe $100 a team. So like, if you take baseball goes through 12 balls a game, just varsity. 12 balls are $84. So each time you're playing with the location of our field, and that's not to take into account like our JV team or either one of our middle schools. So they're already fundraising, buying their uniforms, buying their hats, buying
Supplies.
Right, all of the things that they need for that.
So there really isn't
So
any
understand,
excess?
they're still teams are still fundraising to make several $1,000s for their season.
For operating expenses.
yeah.
Well, the money that the sports boosters share with the JOC, they split up with the concessions.
Yes.
What happens to that money?
That money goes into a general fund, and then what we'll do is we'll help them with teams. Like if you need something to play your sport, you can apply and get that money. We use it for banquets, we use it for scholarships
Okay.
right now.
Okay, because I was thinking to his point, if the kids have their own account for all the fundraising they do, regardless of what they do, and if, say they won't go out for football, and they're fundraising through the summer and they're raising money, it's going into their account. They don't make the team, well, guess what, then he doesn't use that money out of his account for that activity fee.
Well, they don't use money out of for that activity fee right now. They just use it for general supplies because it's our understanding, and if you could check into it, it'd be great, that we can't use fundraising money to pay an activity fee. That's what the teams were told. So if that's not true, that would be.
I don't know if that's true or not. I think what it is it sounds like a mixed metaphor. Something was said about one thing and it's being applied to something else. So I have to check that. I don't. I'm just being. I don't know why PIAA would even weigh in on an activity fee. So I have a curiosity about your comment more than trying to challenge it, so I have to
Right.
just go check that out.
That'd be great, thank you.
Because I just want to, again, speaking as a parent, just make sure we're aware, and I understand there's cost to it, and we have to get to some level, but, at some point, I think that attrition rate is going to start to increase more than you think. I mean, we're at 150 now, 75 for your second, third is free, so we're 225 is the max. I don't like it, but I do it, right? The kids let them play, and, I support them. We go up to 400 for one sport, maybe 300 a second, and maybe another 300. I mean, we're really talking $1,000 versus 225. I mean, that's like a 300% increase.
And I think that's the feedback the board needs to hear. I mean, whether you're right or wrong on it, I think the board needs to at least hear that so that they can provide you with their feedback and you can see what we're dealing with as well.
My only concern with not pricing it correctly is that we won't have this. We won't have any sports.
Right,
and that's the problem we're facing.
Sports in kindergarten, right, whatever, a month or so ago, and we said, oh yeah, we can do it, and we'll do this, blah, blah, blah. And I guess I'm still a little unclear as to when we made those decisions, did we have a dollar amount in mind that we would say, okay, yes, we can apply X amount of dollars towards sports. We can apply X amount of money towards kindergarten. Did we not have any dollars in mind, or did we just say, oh, we'll do it and we'll figure it out?
Basically, we'll do it and figure it out. I mean, we didn't have all the answers to what you want because our budget's constantly changing. All we know is that we don't truly have the money set aside for all the activities at sports. And we said this at the board meeting, that parents were going to have to pay something to maintain the sports. We didn't say we were giving it back completely.
I don't know, maybe it was just me, maybe I'm naive, but I didn't think that that's something maybe $1,000 versus $225.
It's a, what the goal really was is what will the model look like to self-fund the sports program or the extracurricular program, so every year they're not in the discussion of whether they're going to be in or out. Mm-hmm. Whether the board does, what the percentage is of, maybe we fund it 90%. Maybe next year, our budget is so bad we can only, put 50%. Well, these numbers could change depending on what that is, on what we're going to have to ask from the students. But this model was just, what does it look like if we were to self-fund, to take that issue every year off the table? This is what it would look like.
The way I look at it is, it would, and I don't know what the numbers are. That's why we're here. We're all talking together to figure it out. But what would be a shame is if, we came up with a number to save these programs, and everyone rejected those. Oh, that's too much, and ultimately they go away. And then you say, well, I still want my child to participate, so I'm going to find something outside the school district now because it went away. And you end up paying more than you would have what we were suggesting. Then it's like, wow, we could have kept the program. You could have paid less, ultimately, than you got to pay outside the school district, and we all could have kept the program. And that's what could happen.
I think you got to be careful in comparing a high school sport versus if I take my kid and put them in a premier, soccer. We'll go to the Rays and I'll pay $2,000, but I'm getting better training, I'm getting exposure, I'm probably getting more for my money. So I think
right. Well, we won't go as high as that, but
I'm saying, what other options are there? I mean, I can't arbitrarily pick to go to Wise or Mifflin, right? I'm limited in my choices,
right,
versus going to a First Catholic major, right?
Right,
so
right.
we just got to be careful when we're trying to compare what may happen if we're not here. It may not be the same level of.
But I do want to throw in a comment when you said where did the money come from. Right now, the money to cover kindergarten and the sports program is coming out of fund balance. Right. And until there's some other solution on the table, I think it's important for the public to realize that. That's $1 million out of fund balance now that we're going to tap unless some other solution presents itself. Right. And I don't know what that solution may be, but if it doesn't come, the board's made a commitment to take $1 million basically out of its fund balance, which is a very, very tenuous position to be in.
Right. No,
and I'll just let that one go. We didn't come here tonight to talk about that.
Then we're looking at this again next year.
Maybe what I'm asking for is some type of an incremental increase.
I understand. I understand.
Maybe that wasn't the optimal, but we landed at 150, right? So maybe we're at double this, and
right.
Maybe we get there, but maybe not all at one shot.
Right. No, there's no doubt this is a bitter pill. There's no doubt. Yeah. I agree with you 100% about the bitterness of it.
I think Shane was first.
Would you be willing, you mentioned about, just say you only have one student come out for the French club. So you want to support the French club. What happens if you only have 4 girls come out for the girls basketball team? Would you cut the girls basketball team?
Well, you wouldn't be able to field one.
Yeah, right.
Right.
I mean, in that case, you'd have no choice.
And then you fall into.
Well, that wouldn't be the district's fault. We offered it.
Okay, so then that.
It's off.
If you can't field the team, that's not a Title IX issue. If you offered it and you don't get the team, maybe it would be. I'd have to check on that, but I can't imagine that we would be hit with the Title IX issue if we tried to field the team and based on Shane's comment, for lack of participation, you didn't get it, that would be our fault.
But one could argue that it's because you're pricing them out of the picture.
Yeah, that wouldn't be I don't know if that would be a Title IX. You could argue that. I just don't know if it would be a Title IX argument.
Right.
I don't think it would be. You're not pricing the boys and girls separate.
Correct.
Pricing them identical, so
Everything's
it's not a
Correct.
Title IX issue.
I mean, that's just, I'm not a legal Title IX person, but that's just, I agree with you. I don't think that it necessarily would be.
I mean,
It would be an issue of a different kind.
Go ahead, you were next.
I'm just asking, is there any way that we can take a look at how you got to these numbers? I mean, like, is that, do I have to file a right to know to see these things? Because it's great, you did a great job, and it's great to have this, thing, and we are in crisis mode. But if we're going to talk about solutions and stuff, we have to be able to actually see kind of maybe like, oh, okay, well, maybe if we had people donate this or, whatever, maybe then, it would be just...
They're all available numbers, right?
I mean, I don't even think it's I think why don't you explain how you did it? Maybe that'll just clear it up for you. I mean, I don't know that somebody else recrunching these numbers is not going to change this. I'm just going to tell you that. You can come in and look at it and do it, but I think if she explains to you how she did it, you'll clearly understand. That's what I wanted people to understand. There aren't calculus formulas here. You put a couple numbers down, you do a little math,
You just want to see them.
but we can show them to you. That's not a problem.
Like if you're saying that there's advisors, and again, I don't know if this is a solution or what, but I mean, we're here, and like if we can, and some of it maybe has been done before, and I'm not trying to reinvent, but I'm just saying, like if there's advisors, can we have community volunteer advisors so we don't have to...
Well, some of those things become contractual issues.
Okay, so that's...
The advisors are currently, the way the contract is constructed, embedded in the contract. For us to remove them and put a volunteer puts us into the legal realm of subcontracting, which we will lose. I'm just telling you that now. We will lose if we try to subcontract what we currently pay for by giving it to somebody that's not paid. You will lose that. Any lawyer that just came out of law school will tell you that. You'll lose that in a heartbeat.
Yeah,
When it's out of the contract, then that's a different issue. If the contractual partners, whoever they might be, in any situation like this would say, we'll waive that, and they don't challenge it, then that could go away. But until such time that happens, we can't do that.
But you are welcome to all these numbers. You're welcome to look at all these numbers.
Is that pretty much impossible to have removed from a contract when you get it to renegotiate it?
No, you can negotiate anything you want in the contract.
Say, hey,
once you sign it, then you're stuck.
No, but I meant like common among school districts. If you say, you know what, we want that out of the contract because if I can have a volunteer coach baseball and not cost me money.
If the other side would agree, yes, you could do that.
Well,
how often does it happen?
What I'm saying is, yeah, when's the next contract up for?
2015, right?
Well, the current contract with the way we have our stipends built in, and I don't know if all school districts even do it, but they have a separate activity contract. It's part of but it is embedded as part of the general teacher's contract.
2015.
If
2015.
If you don't have that in there, then it's up to district discretion as to how that's implemented. But once you throw it into a contract law supersedes that, and you have to follow that. That's what I meant by the subcontracting issue.
Oh yeah, I just meant like, is that like a very, not being a part of those negotiations, is that
right.
something that they would say, there is no way we're giving that up? Or, you know what I mean?
They might. I mean, that's part, like I said, you can negotiate anything so long as it's not illegal. It's not illegal for someone to say, you know what, we're not going to worry about that, and then they sign a piece of paper that says they're not going to worry about it, so that there would be no legal repercussions to the other party.
Because I know you're going through, some quote-unquote negotiations on not increasing pays or with the teachers and stuff. Maybe that's something you can bring to the table now and say, hey, what would save us a lot is if we can take this part out of the contract rather than medical benefits or whatever else. Can you negotiate that?
We can
now,
talk.
just
We
like
can talk to
you're
them about
anything.
Is that,
But-
you can clarify.
We are.
We are.
Whether we are or we aren't, negotiations are not to be discussed in public, so we're just going to defer any comment on that.
When you mentioned that it's part of the teacher's contract, so someone who's not a teacher here is just,
Exactly. They have to, we have to deal with them with the rate that's in the contract. That's what we're looking at, and if there were to be negotiations, that would certainly be a topic of discussion.
Shane?
What happens, since you're bringing up contracts, if these clubs are in the contract now, or the stipends for the
Correct.
operators?
There's a formula that we use to pay
Okay, but
them.
if they are in the contract now, have you hired people to do this job? Let's say moderators for French? or-
Yeah, they're all there. There's somebody in
They're
each of these
teachers.
They're
positions.
teachers.
Or
They're
teachers.
teachers, and then they get some extra money, which we refer to as a stipend,
Okay.
to go, monitor that club.
Okay, but basically my question is, if the clubs go away and the teachers are already in the contract to be a moderator for that club, do they still get paid for that?
No,
stipend goes
No,
away.
stipend
stipend would go away.
There's
That's-
wording in the contract that says if there's not enough students that apply for this, you
Right.
don't.
That's correct.
Yeah.
We do retain the discretion to determine if there's going to be an advisor, but if there is an advisor, then they have to be paid according to the formula embedded in the
I
contract.
understand that part, I just didn't know if they were already hired.
That's the whole cost savings aspect of them potentially coming out of the budget. It's all stipend money. That's-
Well, this is why I
that's
wondered
everything that
if they
we could
could
think.
be taken out of the budget.
Only if they let us.
Obviously they can.
Yeah.
Well, just for high school boys basketball, for an example, the cost of the entire program is $21,000. $14,000 of it is stipends and related expenses. Now, they're not going to go to zero because somebody's still going to coach and you're still going to have an assistant coach, but they're not, it would be something less than that because you're not paying a retirement, social security, and that sort of thing.
Right.
Is that at the high school level only, or middle school and high school? That 21,000.
Let me see.
Well, that's,
Which one did you quote?
that was
Boys
high
basketball.
School. Middle school,
I have middle school, high school.
Do we only pay the head coach and one assistant for high school boys and girls? Is that right?
middle
see.
school boys basketball,
Right.
that total is
Basketball, I have
$6,200.
Middle school gets one coach, not even an assistant for both schools.
Right, there's only one head coach.
So for middle school, one head coach for each boys and girls.
Oh, I'm looking at
For high
baseball.
school?
Did you say basketball?
Yeah, I'm in middle school boys basketball.
Okay.
Sorry, what was high school, what's the breakdown, how many paid positions?
For high school,
Yeah.
with basketball,
Yeah.
in this calculation, it's a head coach, varsity, and head coach, junior varsity.
So a total of two.
Yeah, there's salary for game help. I don't know what that means.
I don't know.
That's a
Is that
stipend they pay for people to
tickets?
help with tickets and
Like oh,
security and things like that.
Okay.
Crowd control.
Official fees are in there, transportation's in there, supplies is in there.
Yeah.
Did you say boys basketball was at category A? I think that was the highest number, is that right?
Boys basketball, yep, category A.
And that was lumped in with girls volleyball?
Yeah, girls volleyball and boys volleyball
So
is,
their cost is similar, I'm just,
yes,
really?
they're very close.
See, the longer, correct me if I'm wrong, the longer a coach stays here, the more that they're following the teacher salary, step and movements.
I mean, that's public record. That's embedded in the contract, the formula that we use.
Lost all our varsity coaches in the last couple of years, with the exception of baseball.
Right,
All
yeah.
our coaches
Yeah,
are new.
basketball, football, they all do coach.
Yeah. So,
Really, the bulk of what we're paying is the stipends.
The one thing
and
that you don't see when you look at the formula is then remember, we have to calculate a cost for all of their benefits that go along with that, because they do gain benefits on that money. So any of the money that you
He's not a
see,
teacher, but his only role at Daniel Boone is a.
the only thing you don't have to do is, as far as I know, and I'd have to double check it, is if you're not in the PSERS system, you wouldn't get hit for the PSERS.
He's not considered part-time employee, a part-time position.
No matter what money you make, you have to pay Social Security on it,
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, you said, so we're not talking health benefits. When you
No,
said-
no, 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 not health benefits, but just those mandatory benefits that everybody has to pay no matter what money you make.
So that was,
Did you want to answer
Shane
her
has a
question
comment.
about
Oh, I'm sorry, Shane.
about breaking down, like how you arrived at these numbers? Like take the total cost of something and divide it by the number?
your figure looked a little different than mine on the, depending on what.
But just take one there and just talk her through it, and then
Okay, here's what I did, is I took, where is it? Okay. I took boys baseball, which came, middle school baseball came out to $5,864.36. I then took and added it into high school baseball to keep both programs together. That was $11,418.63.
what was factored into that money?
What's factored into the money for the middle school baseball would be the salaries, salary for stipends for the head coach, and for 7th grade, head coach for 8th grade. Then you have salaries for game help, you have Social Security, you have retirement, you have security and official fees, transportation. So all that makes up the $5,864.36.
And one of the things that you have to remember, official fees aren't $5. I mean, at the end of the year, that comes up to a rather large sum of money. And I don't mean $100,000, but officials don't come here for free. You have to pay them.
So did you include all equipment in there?
There was no line for equipment on that because the teams pay for the equipment.
They get $300 for all 4 baseball teams. That's it.
Our sports equipment budget is very sparse
We fundraise for
already.
We
A lot of the
fundraise.
fundraising is already covering some of that. I mean, just ask families in the community. They already can tell you that.
I know that my daughter's on cross country and track. We're fundraising all the time for something.
A lot of that's been cut out of the budget.
Uniforms, anything that they need. Invitationals, banquets, anything.
Is there anyone else in our district, or I guess the county, similar to where we are, or we cut more than anyone else out of our budget?
There was a school on.
I honestly don't. I don't know. I don't have this kind of breakdown for say what Exeter's doing, or I mean, I could probably
Yeah, I don't.
talk to a few people.
I think it was Brandywine. Just this week, I heard it on the radio that they were having budget issues just as severe as ours is, and they were discussing whether to get rid of kindergarten completely and extracurriculars. So they kind of tabled it, but it's being talked about at other districts too. We're just seems, in my opinion, I think we just got there before everybody else.
Yeah, I agree. It's the same thing every year. At least I've been here, and this is my 4th year on here, and that is all the ugliness comes out right around
Now.
May, April, May. That's because you've got that deadline of June, and you got to be done 30 days before that deadline to put it out to the public and everything. So you start hearing all that ugly stuff then that you may not be hearing about other school districts because that's just the way they do it. They're negotiating and all the time, but you don't talk about all the negotiating. They're doing this, they're doing that, they're doing all these things to try to balance that budget, and it's not until toward the very end where you start hearing it. When we got into this year, I made a point of saying, balance the budget early, balance the budget in November, and as ugly as it looks, so we could all see it, and we could all sit here and try to fix it. And you're not sitting here hearing this for the first time in May, saying, geez, I don't have time to fix that. I can't even react to this thing. So you're hearing a lot of stuff now from us that maybe you won't hear from other school districts for another 30 days, 45 days, just because they didn't start as early as we did. But they're all having the same problem. I'll guarantee it. They're all having the same exact problem. There's just no money,
Everybody's pensions cost has gone up to 16%. Everybody's. They have to deal with that somehow.
Those are the numbers that hurt. If you sat down and looked at all those numbers, those are the numbers that you would say, oh my God, you know, I can't believe how much money, and I'm not blaming anybody. You know, the teachers, we love the teachers, obviously, you know, but the collective whole of that is just unsustainable for us.
Absolutely, but I'm just, again, I mean, we're here to try and help you guys find some solutions. Like, if we have no idea how you're coming to this or that, or we don't know if it's, you know, maybe there's somewhere that maybe we can shave off, you know, $50,000. And if we can do that, then that's less than,
Sure.
you know, maybe they won't have to do 200, maybe they have to do, you know, 150 or something like that. And just, even just to help you guys in some way, I mean.
Sure, we appreciate it.
Come on.
You have to go next.
You can,
Okay.
I'll go ahead.
I just have a quick question. Has anyone ever broken down, like, if we took middle school out and just had high school? Now, I don't want anything out, really, or anything cut. But if we separated middle school from high school sports, what would be the cost savings, or what would be, you know, let's look at what it costs for middle school sports and activities, and then what does it cost for high school sports and activities?
We've done that calculation. We don't have it here tonight per se, but we've done that. We've looked at that model before.
And I'm
Let's say it was like
asking because
$85,000.
Yeah.
my
I think you're right.
understanding is
Yeah.
that, you know, there's like JV and varsity sports at the middle school level, and no one ever gets cut, no matter how terrible you are or how good. Is that not true?
So that
So
the
there
40
are
kids
cuts.
just went out for 20 baseball spots or 20.
Yeah,
Okay, so there are.
Yeah, there are some competitive sports that there isn't just kids hanging around the sideline.
Okay,
I mean, you
so-
can't carry that many. You just
Okay.
But
can't
we
do
did.
it.
We did separate it out.
Yeah, it's
I
right-
don't have
Is
the
it a
numbers.
large savings, is my
It's
question.
the middle school athletics is $85,582.68. So to take that out completely, that's probably what the savings would be. The only thing is we also have administrative costs to maintain the sports, and that's the athletic facilitator, the athletic trainer, and the secretary to the athletic facilitator. We have to keep those in place to maintain the flow of how to schedule all the teams, how to do everything. So basically, if you took middle school out, it would be $85,000.
But Monica, I think one of the things she's getting at is, if you lump them together, you're coming up with this activity fee. Whereas if you separate them, maybe the middle school activity fee would be considerably lower.
And it would be cheaper. I mean, if you, some parents are gonna be paying with what you're proposing, almost $2,000. You know, we live here, and we pay taxes here. And we're talking about an activity fee, if you have 3 kids, almost $2,000 from the cap of 500. It would be cheaper for me to send my children to, you know, play an AU team at $150 for a season, you know, or on some other team at the middle school level, and then I'd only have to worry about the fees for the high school level. But those fees could be even smaller at the high school level if they were separated. It just seems like a lot of money.
It is. I mean, it's hard to dispute what you just said. It's just the reality that we're faced with.
High.
If you cut those, if you did, for example, cut middle school sport, and then let's say middle school baseball wanted to start up as a club,
Sure.
could you get rid of those stipends? Because now it's the club. We got rid of it, and now it's a club team, and we have a coach that the school district's not funding.
We were talking
We-
to AMEAC about this, 2 months ago?
Right.
About, you know.
Taking
PIAA does not recognize clubs. They will only recognize the Daniel Boone School District. If you try to participate as a club sport with the PIAA, they won't let you in.
You still have to
But
be
you-
under the
So you could
umbrella.
play- You could play the games, you just can't play in any of the championships.
But there's no championships in middle school anyway.
Yeah, there's no
Right.
championship in the middle school, there's no championship.
Does the middle school use PIAA referees, or is that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, they have to.
But middle
That's the
school
savings
doesn't,
there.
it doesn't count for
There's no
anything.
postseason.
It doesn't-
Right.
yeah, there's
No.
College
And that's why
applications are-
for-
But we got that ruling. We could release those programs as long as we, as the
Still
district,
administer them.
administered it.
Right,
Right.
and they still play under the Daniel Boone
So we-
name.
To her point.
But
we
we'd
could
have to
release the
we'd
middle
have-
school and release the middle school, see what that cost would be, as long as you're administering it from the district level.
Well, that was the whole thing, is if we would have to get rid of all of middle school sports.
Yeah.
Well, wasn't the end result of your conversation with PIAA is that we're still on the hook?
Not necessarily. They don't. PIAA's comment was, we don't care who writes the check. It's got to be run by the school district.
So Goose would still do all the scheduling.
Yes,
Goose
it
still
still has to
Mr.
be.
Hankel, under PIAA rules and the way sports are implemented in the state of Pennsylvania, the high school principal is like the
Chain.
like he's the king. That he or she is that person that's in charge of implementing the building principal. The middle school would be the middle school principal and the high school principal. Not that the board and the superintendent don't have, domain over that part of it, but as far as the day-to-day administration of the sports program, that falls on the building principal.
Even with taking the middle school out, I don't think, looking at how I did it, I don't think it's going to affect the cost as much as you think it will. But it may lessen it. But I don't think it's going to wipe it down to $100 or anything.
I mean, that may be where you're talking about.
It might.
It might. It's worth the exercise.
Yeah.
Will it lessen it? Because now you're having less students participate.
Right. That's what I'm thinking.
And the whole raise the price to cut it out. I was thinking in my head it would probably raise the price if you cut it out.
Well, this is let me make the point here. I think Mrs. Teig brought up a good point. If you want to work with what we did and try to look at an alternate solution, she's offered a model. If someone thinks they have another model, we would love to hear it.
Well,
that's just.
I think it's a really good start.
But this is a good start. It's not the only start, but the numbers won't change. When you start to add up the dollars and cents that we give you, you can play with some other structure and do this, and the costs are pretty solid. I don't want to say they're 100% because you always find another $2 here that you missed on something, but they're close, and they're close enough to begin to make predictions on them that I don't think you have to worry about the numbers. What system you come up with, to Mr. Smith's concern about pricing yourself out of the market, again, that's what I think that you as the public have to provide as feedback to the board so that they can move forward and make the decisions that they believe they have to make with trying to manage this process year in and year out. Because I think, to Mr. Wolf's point, to Mr. Sermonaro's point, we're a little ahead of the curve from other districts. The rumble that other districts hear in the background is this train coming at them next. And it's just coming. I hear districts in southeast Pennsylvania, which is traditionally known as, quote, the rich corner of the state, hearing this is coming to them too. It's starting to get there.
Can I say a couple things? I think this is a great start here, and I don't have a different model. But I will caution you, this is March. You have 2 months to finalize this.
We know that.
Right.
So, you can kick around all kinds of things, but you're going to have to come up with a final answer soon. I hear a split in the conversation. I heard Frank say several times that we took $1 million out of fund balance.
I said that.
I know, but you said that the whole premise of this was so that sports weren't on the table year after year after year, and they were self-sufficient. And I hear Bob saying that he'd like to see this being incremental. Well, even what you're talking about, you're only talking about funding at a certain percentage, so they're not still self-sufficient.
No, they're
Right.
not self-sufficient.
So then they'll be back on the table again next year and the year after.
And Mr. Martino, I think one of the things that we came to the conclusion, we did throw a number out there for self-sufficient, and it was obscene. It was like $2,000 a sport. We know that's just going to fail.
But it's the alternative to eliminate.
Well, that's a question. That's the $64,000. Well, I wish it was only $64,000, but that's the ultimate question. So
I think that's what the public needs to realize is that none of the alternatives are really very good.
it's the bitter pill I was talking about earlier. It's bitter all the way around.
Right. The clubs are only 50 to 55% paying for themselves, and that was I was trying not to do 100% this year to show that the district could maybe absorb some of the cost, but in the future they're not going to be able to absorb it, and we're going to have to slowly increase some of these, or if some of them go away, then it will decrease the expenses, or if the stipends become less. I mean, there's a lot of ors because we don't have all the answers
That
to
number
this.
for this current,
Yeah,
when you
that's
say
not
it's 55% or whatever.
The sports was 100.
13-14 budget.
No, the sports-
Or 90%.
Yeah, this is for a 13-14 budget. Did
You know
you?
what it is for
No, but I'm saying
current
your
year.
activity fees. You had, if your activity fees made clubs 50% self-funded,
50 to 55.
but sports was what, 90?
90, actually, I have it 83.36. Overall. So the sports are funded a little higher.
I mean, what we're trying to do is spread it all out so that, yeah, there are some that are going to pay more to help offset the cost of other activities. We're trying to spread it. If you want to take it activity by activity by activity, then, 80% of these activities are going to have to go away because you just can't the calculations don't work. So the more you spread it out amongst more activities, the more you can kind of come up with a reasonable number and help fund some of it at least. And if you average the whole thing out, what are we funding? 60% maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah. If you take everything and put it
Is
together.
that for this year, about 60% funded? Or
I'm just doing a calculation in my
No,
head.
do we know what? it
Oh,
is?
this year, I don't know.
Was it
140,000 with all the gate
No,
collections
what-
and the
what
activity
percentage
fee.
was funded from out of the budget? I'm trying to figure out.
How many
It's
of this
over
year?
80%.
Oh.
Yeah, the activity fee.
The activity fee was,
It's
We're down to
20%, 30%?
it was very little.
yeah, I don't.
It was.
We'd have to get
you
back
have
to
to
you.
get
on
Yeah,
that.
that one I
It's
don't
really
have.
small. It's a really small amount.
$685,000 for the whole program, and activities brought in 209, activity fees brought in 219,000.
No, I
I
think it's
don't.
less than that.
I don't think it was that much. I can look it up here in a second.
The net savings minus the activity fee of the sports program, I believe, was $465,000. So whatever the difference between 465, it's about 140,000, I think. At any rate.
Get that contract back from that market search guy that came in and did the presentation?
Our solicitor's working on the contract.
Yeah, that's going to, the board will approve that Monday. I mean, that's not going to be an instant source of revenue. That's going to take some time to develop. But we're moving forward with that, yes.
But if there's a way we could all work together to try to keep these things from going away and, forcing these things from going away, and there's a lot of things that can happen in the next 2 years. We can renegotiate contracts. We can get some other sources of revenue with that marketplace, whatever they are.
Market Street.
Market Street. So there's things. So, how do we, I hate to say keep your finger in the dike, but how do we keep this thing going and get ourselves to the point where we do have more options and we do have ways in the future to bring down the cost of some of these things and save the programs? What can we do for particularly the next 2 years to keep these things? You don't want to see them go away. I mean, we don't want to see any of them go away.
No, I mean, it sounds like the biggest cost is obviously the salaries and stipends, correct? And that's, so
Yes.
it's like you said, in 2 years, if that's something to work on towards that new contract and say that it's not included in there, there's
Right.
your cost savings.
There's your cost savings, right?
exactly.
But between now and then,
Right, no, I
do we
know,
raise
that's
the
what I'm saying.
activity?
Well,
fees?
there will always be a cost, but I would suggest to you that the stipends we pay they're high.
No, yeah, I'm not saying, but a significantly reduced cost.
Correct.
Right.
Right.
Correct.
You know.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I have a question. What about, is the liability insurance to the school included in your budget for sports?
Yes.
It's included in your numbers?
I don't know if that overhead piece is in there or not. I don't know that
I would think
it's not that high.
it isn't.
Not that it's going to drastically alter these numbers.
I would think that if you're participating if your children in the school are participating in a sport like football, which can be very dangerous, that your liability insurance would go up considerably.
I'm not saying it's free. I just don't know what the number is, and I don't know that.
If I can have that with me either.
It's one. You don't charge insurance per sport. We have a blanket plan that covers everything, and then you have riders on to cover different sports like football and maybe wrestling. I'm not really sure, so I'd have to look at that a little closer in terms of attaching a value to it. I don't know that you've worked that into this.
No, I didn't see that. I was looking for it doesn't indicate which sport has what cost for insurance. unless you have it,
No,
Frank, that,
I'm looking, I don't see any.
yeah. Shane?
You talked about the third tier sport helping subsidize the other sports. What did you mean by that? I mean,
It's just helping it balance out so that every sport has an opportunity to stay. If we were to break it down into each individual sport, there'd be no way some sports could survive on what.
None of them are paying over, let me be clear, none of them are paying
over the
100%
None of them.
of
Some are close.
the club. They're close, but they're not. So none of them are overpaying to what it would cost to run that club.
right, but, you know, you mentioned about choices. You know, parents are gonna have to decide which, you know, maybe I can do sports, maybe I'm gonna only have to do one this year. But I think if it's kept on the same percentage across the board, that it wouldn't be my fault that my child participates in a much cheaper sport than another sport, but I'm gonna have to contribute more to help offset, you know, a more expensive sport. I think it'd be easier for parents to swallow that. You know, you guys are gonna cover a percentage, we'll cover a percentage. If it's 75%, 25%, if it's 50-50, but then, you know, at least I know what I'm paying for is my child in their sport. And, you know, I think it puts it on a much, she mentioned about baseball. The football team, because I pulled their budget, they get $2,500 allowance for footballs. The school, you know, that's in their budget. They got T-shirts and they got baseball hats. They don't even need baseball hats to play football, but that was in their budget. And that was
How
one
long
of the
ago
things-
was that, Shane?
Was that?
How long ago was that?
That was the budget, that was not this year's budget for football, because I didn't get that one yet. That was the last year's,
It was 11, 12?
11, 12. So there's,
One thing I'll say about that is I know personally that this year football players get considerably less items. Now, I don't know what the Dolan did to provide for those, if he had something in his basement.
A lot of fundraising. A lot of it came out of his own pocket.
So, and there were fundraisers this year too, so I would imagine that the few items they got, which wasn't much, I'm guessing the fundraiser should have covered those costs.
but let me ask you this, if it's in their budget, and it's put in the school budget, it's coming out of school funding. It's not coming out of sports boosters or anything. If it's in it, if it's shown on a piece of paper, that's a cost. And there's a cost that's given to you, and you guys are writing that check. It's hard to argue that, oh, well, he bought it for him, you know, it came out of his own pockets, or someone donated it. It was a line item that is put on the budget. If it's paid by the school, it's right there as a line item in that sports budget.
But take into account with football, because football drives revenue, unlike any other sport. If you didn't have a football team, you would lose a lot of those ticket sales revenue. So a lot of those things are driven, like, because they are
But it
more
doesn't
expensive
cover
sport,
football, though.
but they do.
Like the ticket sales won't cover.
Well, it all goes into the general fund because that's the way the spreadsheets are worked. However,
It helps defray the cost of the sports program. Just like Penn State football pays for a lot of other stuff at Penn State that people don't realize.
But it really shouldn't be fair that you have to pay for baseball, for your child to play baseball.
Yeah, no, I
And the football team gets their footballs paid for free. And that's why I was saying at the school board meeting, has anyone looked into and asked Michelle Goss to explain, you know, why, because I was pulling up things, why do we drive to Lancaster and York to play?
Well, that's all going to be up to the coaches and how the coaches are going to do their season. What we're looking at right now is how to solve the issue we have at hand. the budgets are, I can ask Ms. Goss about her budget and what's in there and look for it. It does indicate on here that supplies is put in there, but it also, that is one of the higher revenue driven sports, so it does pay for some of its own equipment. So, I don't, other than looking at the actual budget for this year, I can't go on 2011, 2012 budget for what we're looking at for 2013 and 14.
Well, the only reason why you have to consider the 11, 12 along with 12, 13, because the only reason why this year's football budget is so low is because they didn't have a good season. They didn't continue playing. And the more games that they play, the more cost it comes to the school district. If they travel throughout the state playing football.
Well, I don't know how they pay for that. I just know that if they might be fundraising for all of those things.
But that wouldn't be reflected in this year's budget yet. So on the numbers that come out for this season, we
Okay.
look at that next year, right? For the travel, I don't think
Hmm?
we
Okay. All right. All right, let's move on out of this. Does anyone else have any other suggestions on?
One other thing, yeah, I know we had talked about physical fees.
Right. We did put down on here for physical fees. We were thinking more like $30 for the physicals to help cover the cost of the physicians coming in. So we looked at what our cost was for physicians and what our current revenue is, and they're not quite balanced. So we're going to, depending on the board or the committee, we thought about raising it to $30 rather than the $25.
Or we charge per physical?
Pardon?
Or we charge per physical when the doctors whoever come in?
Mm-hmm.
How they charge, as per student that they...
How they currently do it, they get...
Is that it, or is it they're here for 3 hours and pay them an hourly rate?
No, it's a contracted rate with for the physicians, and then we've been paying...
It's kind of like the same theory. It's like a stipend.
Yeah.
It's an annual stipend that they get paid for service rendered.
So how much do we pay them? What is that number?
$4,400, yeah.
So we pay the physicians $4,400 to come here.
Whether we have 100 students or 50 or
Correct.
200,
Right.
It's a flat rate.
Yep.
So we're trying to absorb that cost.
So do we know what the average was like, about how many physicals did we...
What did we figure that out today? 100 and...
I don't recall.
It was like 125. What's 25 divided by
Just divide 4,400 by 30.
250 divided by, how many, 125?
We have,
Would be $34. $34.
Yeah, so our current revenue was $4,250. And we were paying the physicians $4,400.
That was pretty much a break even.
And to make sure that we can cover our costs completely, we thought $30 would cover.
So at $4,400, $4,400 contractual rate.
Mm-hmm.
If we do $30, we would have to have 147 students
Get a physical here.
Mm-hmm.
to pay for that completely.
Right.
And how many did we have this year? 125.
What's 4,250 divided by 25?
Divided by 25.
Yeah, because that's what
Oh,
we charge
okay.
them
Because
now.
students don't have to do
170.
that here. They're not required to do this physical
Yep.
at the school.
So that would be what we were proposing. If some students decide to go to their own doctor, then they would pay whatever their rate is. Is this about football, Shane?
Do you have to
Yeah.
offer?
Okay.
Do you have to offer a physical?
Why not
Pardon me?
eliminate that $4,400?
Do you have to offer that, and they can just go to their own physician?
I don't think we have to offer it, but
No,
isn't
we
it?
don't have to offer it.
It's more of a.
It was can you generate some revenue out of it?
Well, you pretty much break even, right?
Yeah, but if you're breaking even, is it worth the
Right.
hassle?
I thought it was. It's a
I
convenience.
think I have to check. We have some obligation for doctors on staff as well to do physicals for mandated physicals for students as well. So that's something that we have to have some sort of cost in there for. This actually helps offset some of that, frankly.
Oh, I didn't realize that part of it.
We have an obligation under the Department of Health regulations for, I forget the grades, like 3, 5, and 7, where students, as parents, you have to turn in a physical form every couple of years to make sure your doctors can do that for students as well. and that comes, quote, free. You don't have to pay for that if you can't afford to do it with your own physician. So we have to budget something for that anyway.
So it's like dental, like this.
Exactly,
Eye
dental,
exams.
physicals, yep, eye exams, that whole thing.
I think with the physicals, you might want to add another $5. I know I took my daughter for her physical, it was $188 for a physical.
Yeah, we've heard prices all
We've
over the
heard
place.
them all over.
At our two parents, $40.
40?
Yeah.
See, and I paid one time 25 and one time 50.
There's a
My
coupon for
healthcare, my plan, we pay
$25.
nothing.
Nothing.
It just depends on what insurance you have.
You pay
And
for it.
Is that the normal
Yeah.
rate for no
That's
insurance?
their normal rate, no insurance. They do the
$35 sounds
sports
right to me.
physical.
All right, do 35.
So why
You
not
wanna do
match-
35?
match that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because as
Sounds like
as
it's a
parent,
bargain
I can
for us to
swallow
do
that
it.
extra
Yeah.
$5, $10 for a physical rather than, it's easier pill to swallow than going from 150 to 450, as your activity fee. This revenue, doesn't hurt as much, and it's covering itself that you don't have to worry about, at least covering the doctor's fees. So an extra $5, $10 for a physical, and parents who want to take their kids to their own, I won't do it again. I won't take it, I'll bring it here, that's,
Yeah.
Just so Shane understands, you raised the physical fee $5. That's not necessarily going to offset your activity fee.
no,
Right.
it's not
Right.
going to offset it, but I'm saying.
no, it's not intended,
No,
it's only offsetting the physical, the doctor's fee.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But I think you'd have a lot less pushback from parents if you go from 25 to 40.
I think they're gonna look at it in total. I think they're gonna look at it in total anyway. No one's gonna be happy because your activity fee went up, your physicals went up, everything went up. So it's not, there's no win-win
It's a
situation.
lose-lose.
There's no way to sell that in a positive way.
Yes.
When do you need to make a decision on the physical, on the activity fees? Before the budget, before the voting on June 28th?
Yeah, it has to be done in May, right, to
That'd be the end of
propose,
May.
So that
propose it
yeah,
to
we-
you
the,
would say exactly what the activity fee would be before you.
I was hoping to have it
Is that correct?
at least by May,
Yeah.
so that we can get it out there and let parents know what's going on. I personally don't want to wait till the last minute to find out what I'm going to have to
Yeah,
pay.
I wasn't sure what.
So I was hoping sooner than later. That's why we're working on it.
Right, I just wasn't sure what the date was that you had to have it announced by.
Just
Do we get,
when you set this fee, we could update our software or computers so that credit cards could be used.
Yeah,
Or payment plan or something.
right,
I agree.
Yeah.
Okay.
ahead of time?
That is something we need to look into.
Yeah, you're just looking at if you, speaking from my perspective, you're looking at numbers, what parents could swallow, and maybe you can back it in that way. Just looking from, my kids are almost, well, one's in middle school, one's still playing youth sports, so I look at what I pay now. So if I have a kid that plays football, wrestles, and then plays baseball, 3-sport kid, I'm gonna pay $600, $500 to $600 minimum out of my pocket for him to play those 3 sports. So maybe some type of cap, like right this year, I think it was a family
We had, the
cap.
first time we passed it with a cap,
But maybe instead of a family cap, which was I think 500.
500.
Maybe it's $600 per child is the cap. And see what those numbers come out to be, you know what I mean? Like if
I
it's-
looked at that at one
Something
time.
like
It
that.
needed to be capped close to $750 per child,
It's not.
but it still didn't cover all the costs.
Well,
We
are
still,
looking- that's what I'm saying. Are we looking at that's what I think we.
Well, that's a
'Cause- but
decision
you
the
know how
board
many-
has to make.
Or are we looking at 50%?
well, how many students we had capped last year? 8. 8 families capped. That did not
No, I'm
cover.
just saying, instead of having the first sport and then the lower price and then the third one free, keeping it all, instead of 150, 75 and free, it's 250, 250, and 250. And there is no, or it's 200, 200, and 200. So I'm just saying from somebody, I know what I pay now.
Mhm.
If my kid wanted to play 3 sports right now, it would cost me $500, $600 a year for him to play those 3 sports. So just from a public's perspective of what they could swallow, so to speak, something like that would be consistent with what I pay now for my kids.
What does, just out of curiosity, what's the going rate for our youth sports in this community? What is what's youth football cost?
Like 75.
For example,
What's youth
for
football?
Youth football is $150.
And what does that get you?
Get you a helmet, shoulder pad.
You turn in, you don't keep it.
Yeah, well, no, if you want, now we have jerseys, which you have to buy yourself, which are an extra $38. It's $180.
So all in, it's about $200 to get your shoes and everything.
Does that transportation?
And that includes a $50 automatic fundraiser that they have to pay for if they want to go.
Right. I remember
resell
those.
It, they can get their money back, but they have to pay us up front for it. So between $175 and $200 all in gets you the uniform and everything every year for football.
But do you have transportation, or do you have to take them everywhere? And
No, that doesn't include transportation.
So that's family provided.
No, yeah, that's family provided. I'm just saying cost-wise.
Right, no, that's a fair answer.
Baseball for my kid this year to play DBCA, which is 13-year-old kids, is going to cost $240 for him to play baseball.
More than football.
More than football.
And do you have to buy then your glove, your bat, your shoes?
And I got to buy all that stuff.
Now that's at that level. The younger levels are.
The younger levels, like for 12, 10, 11-year-old baseball players, it cost me $135. So even for Little League, it was $135 just for baseball.
Now, what's the youth soccer going rate around here?
They're probably, I think it's here, but it's probably no more than $80 a season.
Yeah, I mean, like,
And that's just an entrance fee. No shirt,
like a 10
no shorts.
Sure.
It's a shirt, shorts.
No shorts.
No shorts, a shirt.
And socks.
So you got to go buy your own cleats.
Uniform. You get a uniform, shirt.
Yeah, you
socks.
definitely have to buy them.
And you got to go buy your own shoes.
The shirt and the socks.
I don't think any sport provides shoes.
No, I'm just asking. I'm just trying to make a comparison
No
here.
sports provide shoes. So it's the basic uniform, shirt, shorts.
Okay.
And those costs do go up as you go older. I was just using that as an example of what a parent could swallow.
Basketball is cheaper. You're probably going to max out about 65 unless you do travel. There's a little bit more for travel.
I think wrestling we charge 65 or 75 for that.
And then what do they use that money to buy the balls and pay the officials? Is that, or are the officials volunteers?
Officials, equipment.
And there's other stuff that offset. That doesn't cover all the cost of running. I'm on the football board, or we have concessions then, or baseball. We host our own tournaments, which might generate another $6,000 of revenue because we charge $300 a team to come play a tournament one weekend or whatever it might be. But that doesn't make it quote unquote self-funding either, without some other its own internal fundraising. But just from a parent's out-of-pocket standpoint.
So if you have a child who plays a fall sport, a winter youth sport, and a spring youth sport, from what I'm hearing, you could be out $1,000 out of pocket.
No, I think we're like $600.
$600? Okay. Okay.
Anywhere from 3 to 6. Like, it all depends what sport.
That's per kid. So if you have two kids,
Per child.
so if you have 2 or 3 kids, you could be approaching 4 figures. Easily. Easily. Okay.
So yeah, I mean, I'm just, and every situation is different. That's just speaking from.
No, and obviously every family's different too.
$500 per child, $500 to $600 per child, if they're playing 3 sports, is what I pay now.
That's what I was trying to get at with that conversation.
Like cap a child at $500 and they can play 3 sports?
Yeah, I'm just saying instead of, like you had to break down now 150, 75, and 3. Quote, if they played a third sport, they weren't charging activity. I'm saying more of something like along the lines of whatever number you come up with. Instead of having a break, it's 200 for the first sport, it's 200 for the second sport, and it's 200 for the who wants to play a third sport. And it costs you $600 if he's a 3-sport athlete type of thing. Rather than having it get, his third one's free or whatever, just it's something like that, 200 per sport, let's just say. Instead of
that you are proposing to eliminate that this year.
Yeah.
Right.
They have to pay per sport.
Right. There is no free.
There's no.
Yeah, I was just.
Right.
And there's no cap.
You said the public have an input, just kind of.
Yeah, no.
That's why I asked you what you're paying locally, because I don't. It's been a while since my kids did that. I mean, I raised 2 boys through that kind of system too, so I don't. Back in the day, it wasn't any cheaper. It just was, it's scaled back for the times.
I would
Okay.
definitely encourage this, some type of family cap. Like, if I just look at my kids, based on that schedule, I'm at $1,850 for them all to play sports, and that's telling them to give up all their clubs. So, a cap would be nice, because I am one of the people who hits the $500 cap.
The cap this year was only for sports, or did that include activity?
That included activities.
That is everything.
Everything.
Yes.
Yeah, the activity fee, Bob, the activity fee was
Yeah.
activities, period, the umbrella of activities. The cap,
But the cap was.
the cap stopped for sports or clubs or everything, and then you paid no more than 500.
Kids could get you there, well, yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
But like you said with your example, and I'm just playing devil's advocate, I don't know the answer or advocating one. You said it could cost you up to $1,800 with this model, but that's probably costing us $4,000.
Right, that's what I was going to say.
So that's our dilemma. I mean, yeah, that's a lot of money for you, but we're putting out a lot of taxpayer dollars so that your family can enjoy $1,800 worth of activity.
No.
And again, I'm being the devil's advocate. I got kids in the system too.
Well, I will pay that, but there are a lot of people who can't pay that, and if you can't pay that,
And that's a dilemma.
you can't do that.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it really
That's a dilemma.
it really
It
does
is a
come
dilemma.
down to when you try to cap these sports and you try to cap them off, something has to go. And the way it is right now is it all goes. I mean, we can't just pick and choose which ones we can actually have. We either put them on the table and we try to support them, or they come off the table and they're gone. So I know these prices seem really high, and I know I'm going to have to pay a lot, but the alternative of not having them around, I think, outweighs it.
We still
Too
have
many.
the option to use some money from the fund balance, right, which could help to lessen our impact. Right? I mean, I'm not saying
We haven't made that-
but we could take some portion of that.
It'll be
I think we're
yeah, and then you'll
next year's
play
going to
for
be
one more
worse.
year, and next year it'll be gone because
And-
there's no money to take from the fund balances.
So
it's
what,
done.
We-
are you saying that if we pay this amount this year, sports are in forever? Is that what you're saying?
What
Nothing.
It's still going to be a
Right, still
issue,
gonna be
whether
an
we
issue.
pay this amount or we use the fund balance. It looks like
Mm.
sports and activities are still going to be an issue every year.
I think
They will
I
until
think with
they-
if we get the model right, then it will help us sustain ourselves much better to the point we have more options to negotiate down some of these costs. The way I'm looking at it is, we really there's not really much we can do, to be honest with you, as on the school board. We can only look at expenses and try to cut costs, and there's only certain areas we're allowed to touch, and they're the areas that we limit ourselves to. That's why these discussions are always so ugly, because you can't touch a lot of other contractual things. So if we can establish ourselves to help sustain these for another 2 years, that gets us to the point where we do have those options to say to whether it's one of the unions or whatever, listen, we can't afford these rates, these got to come down, we got to save these programs, and then we've got a lot more, power to negotiate that. But for now, how do we save them in the meantime? It's not going. We are going to have to pay for this. It's not going to be 100%. It won't. It's just too much money. You'll never pay 100% of these. We know we're going to have to pay out of the school district somehow, even next year. But if we can limit that to make sure that all these programs can still stay, now we're in the 2014-15, negotiating year.
And I think that's why, if you do a percentage across the board, that you're treating every sport the same, and those parents are responsible for their portion, and the school district's going to be responsible for their portion. And then there's no arguing among parents, well, soccer's more important than baseball, and baseball is more, and boys sports are more important than girls sports. It's all on a level playing field, and every parent knows, okay, and it would be up to the coaches to help save money. It'd be their responsibility to say, okay, you know what, we're going to not travel to Lancaster. We'll make sure those games are played here, and they work within a budget that's split between the parents and the school district. To have some have to pay more to help.
And to your point, that may happen. Maybe almost every sport opens up with a, quote, non-league schedule. Maybe that goes away.
Right.
I mean, because we're trying to cut costs. I mean, football opens up. I mean, it's 4 weeks till they're playing in the county schedule. Basketball probably has 3 or 4 tournaments before they actually play their. I remember when I used to coach wrestling. We went to a couple tournaments. We traveled here. We didn't get into our season until January. So that might be the very kind of thing that has to get cut back.
Can I ask a question on that?
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm just throwing out something, and forgive me if I'm wrong, but say it costs a student $5,000 to be, for a student to play in this sport. You're saying like it would cost $2,000, let's say, for a child to participate, and if it's budgeted where it's 50%, that means that you're spending $1,000 for your kid to play in that sport, as opposed to, I don't know, $250 or $450.
Right, but that's the actual cost. And everyone's, if
Right.
a child's in a sport that's only
But parents can truly afford to,
well, they're talking, eventually this might have to happen that we're covering the whole $2,000.
right, but.
But you can do it in such a way where the cheaper sports,
I mean, I do think
like they have it set up, so the only cheaper sports are paying less.
There's some places
No, they would pay the same percent.
No, but in the
People are
formula
paying a
that's
whole lot
suggested,
more money than
the
in
cheaper sports are
Pennsylvania.
still paying less.
Yeah, they're still
They're
paying.
paying less out of pocket, they're paying $250 instead of $450.
Right, but
They're
if,
just paying a little bit
now my
more.
child's not in one of these cheaper sports. I'm
Well-
not saying, I'm not arguing this because, I'm just saying as a fair, that everyone, there's no arguing or no fighting or anything like that. Everyone's responsible for their own child and their own portion.
Yeah, and I think
That is the way it's set up, is that for that sport, whatever that sport costs, that parent will take care of that cost. We're not asking them to go from a category B, but they're going to pay a category A. Everyone in the category B, those costs for those sports are all almost equal. So in that category, that $350 is helping cover that child's sport. I don't understand the arguing with other parents because they're all in the same boat together.
One, I think what he was saying is sports was 90% funded and clubs were 50, so they're not.
Well, right now it's not, but this was just a formula to put together. If we decide that we want 80% done on clubs
Right.
and 80% on sports, then that
See, one of the things
that's
that
the
drives
way it'll go. Everything will go up on the activities.
one of the things that, while clubs seem like they're less expensive, based on the formula that's in the contract, many of the people that do the clubs, in fact, are the teachers, and they've been doing it for many years. The longer you've been doing it, the more expensive that stipend starts to become.
I do think the only thing, and you would know better than me, but when you become self-funded, so to speak, you're walking, I think, a gray line of, from a community saying, well, if I'm self-funding the football coach, I want to have some say in, when he's let go, because now I'm paying for his, if I'm 100% funding who this coach is.
And that's a bridge we'll have to cross.
I'm just saying we're going down that line where they're saying, well, you're not paying for it anymore, I am. So when that guy goes,
And that's why we said, but you're right. I mean, I'm not going to argue with you on that because that is a legitimate point. But the point is that as far as the administration of the program, it has to, under PIAA, remain with the school, and it's the school's say, regardless. That's why PIAA says, we don't care who writes the check. We're coming to the school when there's a problem.
Oh, I know legally you have to. I'm just saying it's
Well, you're talking a political issue.
A political issue where it starts to, now it's
Absolutely.
every board
We
meeting
didn't-
is,
I mean-
we're paying for this guy, and he's,
Right.
I mean, it just
Right.
creates an uglier situation when you're self-funding yourself.
Well, we don't
Potentially.
have the
absolutely
administrative part in here. We didn't put in like the principal of the high school. We didn't put his salary in here. So he's actually running everything. He's overseeing.
Right.
So we didn't put in the athletic facilitator. We didn't put in the athletic trainer. So those are people you're not really paying for. So the school is constantly going to be paying for something.
Oh, I agree.
It's just not ever going to go away.
For something, you want to have some say in how it's run.
I understand, yeah.
Regardless of what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe that's where all your gate receipts from the basketball and football games go to, not back into it, but help parents?
Well, then
The maintenance, the Michelle's salary, the principals, or?
Then this will go up. The cost will go up because the gate receipts are taken off of the sport, the individual sport.
I would say
It
to
helps.
those of you
It helps
who,
balance out that sport.
for those of you who took your time to come out here tonight, that if you do have other models and other ways of potentially looking at this, put it together, a little plan in writing. We'll be happy to look at it. I mean, this is, like I said at the beginning of the meeting, to come full circle, this is an attempt to try to deal with something we've really never had to deal with before. I mean, we started with the activity fee, but instead of getting better, the budget picture's gotten worse. So it's put us in this circumstance. And rather than, I think we're at a solution as a district, and as Mr. Wolf said, other districts getting ready to face this. We either come up with resolutions or it goes away.
Yeah, I can tell you, and I think you all know this, especially you folks who are here at all these meetings. There's not one person on that school board or administration that is saying, let's cut the programs. Let's cut them. Yeah, it'll help us balance the budget, and we're in good shape. Everyone is saying, come up with ways to save them. Right now, we've got a budget deficit, and we're just looking at numbers saying if this got cut out, it would balance the budget. But no one is saying, I support cutting these programs. Get them out of here. We're all saying the same thing. How do we save them? What do we need to do to save them? And it's all dollars and cents. It's sad, but that's what it is.
Wait a minute. You had your hand up over here.
Just a quick question. Dr. Arlo, you were stating that the longer you advise a club, the higher your salary goes, or the stipend goes. Is that correct? So if I'm the advisor of the varsity club, it's not a flat fee of $1,500 I get for just advising that fee. Every year that I'm doing it, I get a pay increment.
I don't know what the formula looks like, but I know it goes up. It's like a points formula, and then they factor in this and multiply that, and it goes up. I can get it's in the contract. We can show it to you. I mean, that's not even right to know.
Is that normal?
Every district.
I'm just wondering.
Yeah.
I mean, I
normal
work
in
for a school
education.
district,
Yeah.
And it's a flat fee to be an advisor to,
Let me say it to you this way. That formula was negotiated. So it's a negotiation instrument.
Okay,
Let me add to that.
It never
This
stays
contract
flat.
is very generous.
okay.
I
just don't
you're
think that
making
that's
2,000, I mean, how much of an increase they're going to get? I mean, $100, 200. I mean,
Yeah, but that's across
No, but I'll
the
tell you
board.
what, when you
Everybody-
start, some people have done some of these things
For like 20 years.
20 years. It does start to, with a formula, it starts to get hefty. I mean, I made $400 coaching junior high wrestling a long, long time ago. I thought I was making a lot of money then,
But
but
it just doesn't seem fair if
I didn't have that kind of formula.
a block coming in, and I want to be an advisor to this club. I mean, and then on the flip side, if I'm coming in as a teacher, I'm not giving up varsity club. I mean, that's just an example. I'm not giving up that advisorship. But I don't know that that's normal.
Yeah, they're all discussion points for the next go around.
Okay.
Okay.
The coaches, do they run the same way, or does it run by team? Is there stipend based on what they coach, or how long they've coached it?
How long?
Both. It's a multi-factor formula.
Like a football coach, I looked at the contract, gets more of a, than the baseball coach or whatever another.
I've seen in some districts where the head football coach is 14 points, then 14 points gets translated into a dollar value, and then how many assistants you have is another couple points for you. Everybody uses a formula. The formulas might not look the same, but the bottom line to the formulas is the longer you're in them, the higher they start to go, because you get credit for, it's not the first year you make, let's just say we're paying the head varsity baseball coach, I'm just going to throw a number out, $1,500. It's not the same next year. It's more. We could, if you would say, you know what, you're going to build a salary scale that says for the next 5 years, coaches in category A, head coaches all make X, Y, Z, whatever it is. And then there's no formula. You know for 5 years what your cost is. No matter who's doing it, that's what it's going to be.
Is that part of the, can we negotiate that without negotiating the whole contract? Like, could we, if we
We can talk about whatever you want at the negotiations table. It's just not something we can sit here in public and we can expound on it and talk about it. But when you get down to brass tacks, you got to sit across from the table, and when you sign that piece of paper, that's what you have to live up to.
But how, like, as we're talking, we're finding out this information, like, how as parents or the community, like, how can we say, like, okay, well, can you guys bring this to the teachers or to whoever is...
You stand at that podium and you enter it into the record at a board meeting. Say, please consider this when you're negotiating your next contract.
Okay.
Goes right into the minutes of the board meeting, and then...
the process, and then they have...
Well, you as a private citizen can't get involved
Sure.
hands-on in the negotiations with any of the unions. But you can certainly give input at any time as a member of the public to anything that the board's doing.
We have a committee, if you will, of board members, strictly board members. It's not an administrative function that we refer to as the Meet and Discuss Committee, and they sit down with all of our different contractual partners and have discussions constantly. So those discussions go on all the time.
And when do...
They're not subject to public.
Oh, they're not subject.
They are not, because they're negotiating. They're negotiating meetings.
That's a sunshine law issue that does not have to come out into the sunshine.
From last July, when we first got into this fiscal year, until June 30th, these guys meet constantly and discuss everything.
Say, like, a group of people get together and they're like, well, how about, like, these things? And they hand it off to you guys and say, here, can you please talk to them about that?
Mm-hmm.
Can you do
Sure.
that?
Absolutely.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. Our chair for that committee is Mr.
Oh,
Wolf.
Ms. Wolf. Okay.
Mr. Wolf and the other committee members would have to agree with what you want negotiated.
Right.
See, and just to their point, the superintendent, and administration doesn't negotiate with the bargaining units. We administer. There's a difference.
Right.
I don't have the authority to negotiate any kind of contracts as superintendent, nor do any of my principals. That's within the hands of the board by state law. They had asked me for advice. They asked me for information. I'm allowed to do that. I don't even sit in the room and negotiate with them. That's not something that superintendents do. That's not their role.
Okay. Is that model that you use tonight, is that something that you would share, or that's not for...
Well, we haven't disseminated it yet. I mean, I think it's a work in progress. I mean, at this point, to put something out there that is an incomplete work, I think would be a little bit dangerous than people. I mean, but if you have input and thoughts on it.
Not even the figures, but the methodology behind it. We could play with our own figures, but there's a board meeting Monday. Is that right?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Is any of this work coming to there?
That's just a voting meeting.
Yeah.
So whatever's on the agenda to be voted, I mean, she'll be reporting out about what this committee talked about, but there won't be any decision made of following up specifically on this topic at the meeting Monday. In other words, there won't be a resolution to do anything on Monday with this.
No. Okay. One more?
Well, it just seems to me, I've only ever been to one other meeting of the finance committee. But it seems to me that actually everybody in this room is funding everything 100% because we're all taxpayers. And that's why we're all here. And I think you're doing a great job to keep the sports and everything that you can keep in the system until it's time to
make another decision.
Negotiate.
Right.
Because if these teachers that are getting their stipends now have to give them up for 2 years, they're not going to be in much of a negotiating mood in 2 years because they're going to be living without that money for 2 years. And if they keep that stipend now, when the time comes up to negotiate the contract, they're going to want that extra money. And if they have to give up something to keep it, they'll probably be more willing to do that.
Well, not to negotiate in public, but I think the reality is that there's going to be less of them if we can't find other cost-cutting measures. Less staff.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. But
so they have to make a decision whether it's more with less or less with more.
Right.
I mean, that's the ultimate question.
Exactly, and that's what I'm saying. I think that it's great because I think there is a possibility that all these expenses are going to go down a lot in the new contract negotiation. and therefore maybe this is only a 2-year.
It may be. We're
Maybe.
hoping that, I mean, I've been saying it, this is my 5th year with the board. I had 1 year where the budget was, quote, fairly easy, and for the last 4 years, it's been not for anybody's fault, but it's been a train wreck in terms of trying to get it balanced. And we've lost a lot of programs, and I see some light at the end of the tunnel. Maybe more funding will come from the state level. Maybe I hate to get political here, but we've talked about cyber charter school reforming. If that money were here, some of that would help defray some of this. If the pension problem were somehow taken care of. Mr. Martino sat here for 2 years talking about property tax reform. If they found another way to help fund schools, some of this may start to go away. You're correct. But it isn't this year.
No.
And it might not be next year yet because Harrisburg moves notoriously very slow.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
I think they're starting to hear it, but we'll see.
In hopes that it won't need a Band-Aid in the 3rd year.
Right.
Okay, I'm going to wrap up soon. I'll take like one more.
Just we start talking about positions, but the Director of Administrative Services position, that's new this year, correct?
Director of Administrative Services, yes.
Right, new this year. Is that is that continue in the foreseeable future, or is that a temporary position? I'm just wondering.
It's a position that's in the budget, and that position, not to rehash all that, came at there was a low savings for that last year, but there was a savings to the district to implement that based on some retirements. We reevaluate administrative positions every year.
Yeah, I was just wondering if it was the first.
The answer is that a temporary position, no, it's not. But if in situations sometimes when people retire or if they leave or it's not there, then the board has to make a decision as to whether they want to fill that position again or not, just like any teaching position. Anytime we lose any professional staff position that we do not absolutely have to have or can cover in another way, that would be a board's decision to say by attrition we're not refilling that position.
Okay,
I'm going to revenue issues. You had a very successful play a couple weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
And a member of the taxpayers group had stood up at the school board meeting and said, why are you only charging $6 for the play? And there's a revenue issue. I mean, I think you could very possibly raise the cost of admission to your plays and musicals.
Yeah, they actually self-fund.
That's a self-fund, so that's different. We don't actually...
They're not even computed in this.
They're not even in this
formula.
calculation.
They're kept. Anything that self-funds is kept separate from this formula.
All right, the other revenue issue. The meeting where parent after parent stood up pleading for kindergarten to be retained. That's the largest school board meeting I've seen.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked the question about could you charge for kindergarten, and Mr. Suber said his opinion is no. Could you call it something else?
That's what the question I asked that night.
Yeah,
I asked that exact question. I said, well, how about if we eliminated kindergarten, and then we brought in this new program, and we called it something totally different.
Exactly.
And he said, under the law, any kind of education that you give to a 4 or 5-year-old child, they consider kindergarten. Mm-hmm. You can call it whatever you want in your school, but it's kindergarten. And if it's kindergarten, you can't charge for it.
But
has he contacted, I believe it was Twin Valley, that broadcast in a newspaper that they were going to charge for full-day kindergarten?
Yeah, I remember us having that conversation.
He said a nonprofit could come in and run the kindergarten,
right,
charge for kindergarten, but it wouldn't be the school district doing so. So that might be another option that we look, because I do remember that being brought up, because I thought, well, that would actually be something that might be able to be worked on,
because it
to bring in another company.
The cost of what you have now, and still provide kindergarten. To the children that were eligible for kindergarten.
And possibly full-day kindergarten if it's through a if we could take note that it'd be full day. People want full day instead of half day. If we go to nonprofit kindergarten, where somebody else runs it, full day would be the answer.
I agree. But
I just don't know if that's a contract issue or not.
I think if you could do that.
I think it's bigger than a contract. That's a statutory issue that I think Mr. Subers, I don't know the answer to those questions. That's why I'm not saying anything. I think Mr. Subers would have to weigh in on those.
We can definitely look at it again.
Yeah, I think if you could, it would save you money. It would satisfy the public. I mean, it serves everybody's needs.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the parents, just on kindergarten, parents that have kindergartners would much rather keep their kids here in the district and move seamlessly on to first and second grade or so
Sure.
and so on.
I think
rather
what-
than taking their kids somewhere else, making other friends, so forth and so on, but they stay right here in this district and they move right on.
I think, I
Okay.
think that on the kindergarten issue, to your point, Mr. Martino, I think that Pennsylvania is one of the few states that has that quirk in it where kindergarten is not actually required. And I think if they go any direction, they're probably going to wind up making it statutory to have kindergarten. And I don't know that's going to happen in the next 2 or 3 years either, but that's the talk that I hear. That why do you have this funky quirk in the law to begin with? It shouldn't even, a lot of people would say it shouldn't even be a conversation. Of course you should have kindergarten. Why doesn't our own state require it? So that's a whole political football that may go in some other direction. I can't read the future.
And I remember Mr. Zuber saying if it's, since you already have the program.
Correct.
Is the reason why. If you didn't have, if we.
It would be a lot
Right, we
easier.
had to
Correct.
get
If
rid
you
of
didn't
it.
already have it, it'd be a lot easier.
Correct.
That might be, you could only find an empty building in the future.
Okay.
That-
All right. I'd like to wrap this up.
Kindergarten.
If everyone's ready, I just want to wrap it up. If there's any more questions, please feel free to email me if you have any more. And part of why I'm reluctant to share the breakdown I have is because it's going to change. As soon as I start getting more different figures from Danielle, if something changes, then this will be changing constantly. So I can share with you how I did it, but at the same time, all of these could change tomorrow if Danielle had something different.
I think it's important if you're thinking of how to help us to understand what our embedded and fixed costs are in terms of these things, and to think conceptually in terms of another model. Some of you already started to suggest some of those things. So, I mean, Shane said something, Mr. Sermonaro said something about putting a value on these. I think, Shane, you were kind of getting to that. You'd like to know what it is in that category. So that's the kind of feedback that we need to formulate a plan that has to pretty much be done within about 60 days.
And there, Mr. Hankel said he was going to give me the information, the budget information, but what I was asking for wasn't what he had, which was a breakdown of, it's hard for us to help you guys without knowing what the actual costs are for all the sports, per sport, what is the actual sports budget that I had to file a right to know last year and the year before.
Okay.
Do you guys have that available, or should I go through the same process and file the right to know to get all this stuff?
How are they getting information? Is it the right to know only?
Yeah, the right to know. Well, it depends on what is accessible and what is. We try to turn around the request. Part of the reason for the right to know is to make sure you're not giving out information you shouldn't, and also not getting inundated with. I mean, if we got 4,000 requests tomorrow, which we don't, for information, it helps protect us too in terms of the turnaround time to get the information out.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, the only thing we're required to give is what we already have. We don't have to remanipulate numbers but we'll give out whatever we have that's on paper. I mean, that's already been done.
Okay. So, all right. Any other questions from the committee?
No.
What do you want to
Okay.
do with the board, just to be clear before we close, what do you want to take forward for the board on Monday? Just a summary of this conversation?
concept.
Just the concept.
Okay.
Some of the
Yeah.
basic numbers, I think, and see
Okay.
what the reaction would be.
Okay.
Right. That's
I
fine.
think
Sounds great.
I think you did a great job.
Yeah, I do too. Thank you, Monica, for all that. I know how many hours went into that,
Thanks. All right.
just to get criticized.
Yeah.
No, I don't.
No,
it's
that's
a good
fine. That's
feedback.
fine. Okay. This meeting is now adjourned. It is 8:58.
Hey, Monica.